Hello, Afrikan Youth. Welcome to the Colonial experience. Now, if you're new to the Colonial experience, the Colonial experience was created to empower you, the African youth, with awakening knowledge, enlightenment. Enlightenment out of Apeness. I hope you're ready. Today, I wanted to, I've had this metaphor on my head, a metaphor that I got from the Bible, one scene, one interesting meta story or narrative where, Jesus is around a certain mob and they want to stone down a prostitute. And he says to the mob, let he without sin be the one to cast the first stone. Let he without sin be the one to cast the first stone. Now, today's topic is probably the most important topic that I've done so far, because this is the 15th episode, the 15th major episode of the Colonial series, and as you can see, I'm in a park. I'm doing something different because I really wanted to just enjoy the fresh air as I talk about this. What I'm about to reveal to you is the type of information that gets videos pulled down, but it's not conspiracy or anything like that. It's truth. And I hope that YouTube finds this video as truthful and empowering to the African youth and lets it stay. I also hope that as we begin this series and getting into the juicy, important stuff, that the African youth can now begin to tell a friend about the Colonial experience, subscribe. Pretty much I hope to win your subscription because we are now getting into the good stuff, So this is probably the most important topic ever on the experience, because we begin to touch that good stuff, We begin to open doors into the light, And this is really this is why I started this Colonial experience. This is what I've been, this is what I want to evangelize. This is what I believe my contribution can be. The topic is as controversial as it gets, but it's only controversial because Africa needs to understand it. And the topic is why Africa should be grateful to Europe. We're going to talk about why Africa should be grateful to the white man for the blessing of colonialism. Now, I told you that the Colonial experience is awakening. So now the awakening begins. We're discussing why Africa should be grateful to Europe and the white man for the blessing of colonialism. This is an obvious, very obvious truth in itself for the awakened, but it's very polarizing for the sleeping mind. And if you find yourself hating the words I'm about to say, it's because you're still locked, you're still chained, you're still deeply enslaved. And you have work to do. You know, you have to look within. And I believe if you went deep into the belly of the beast, scoring for dragons, you'll be overwhelmed with the ignored devil or demons within you, and the immense responsibility and truth you're adamant to embrace. So check yourself. But let's get back to the topic. Let's get back to the topic. So why should Africa be grateful to the West for colonialism? I mean, colonialism is bad, and we need to thank the West. Kenrad, what are you talking about? Let's begin by defining colonialism. What is colonialism? And of course, you can run to Google and figure out the long definition of colonialism, but colonialism is pretty much, at its basic, taking up, not necessarily living in someone else's land, but taking up land and and exploiting it, imposing it for your benefit. So what may lead an individual into colonialism? What might lead you into taking up land for cultivation? What leads to colonialism is a place of lacking. So colonialism, or African colonialism, was the West taking responsibility for their lacking and taking over African land, exploiting African land. So behind colonialism is a need to survive, and that's what may lead a nation into colonialism. What leads you to, for example, leave the village and go to the city, leave the country and go to the urban area, is so that you're able to make money, so that you're able to bring food, put food on the table. That's why you leave your house and go elsewhere. Now, every time you leave your house and go elsewhere, you're not going to your other house. You're going somewhere to, offer a service, do the best you can do, and to pull out, food for your family. So you're literally at the beginning steps of colonialism. Every time you leave your own place and go to a new place to figure out how to survive. So that brings us to the first question. Is it moral? Is it just to resent an individual for taking responsibility? Are we right for hating Europeans for them taking responsibility and stopping their suffering by exploiting the rich land of Africa? Because by saying it is moral and just to resent them, it's saying that it's okay for them to suffer and die. It's the same statement. When Europe came to Africa, they came because they didn't have. They came because life was hard, they were suffering. And they found this rich land, this rich, blessed land. And of course, they had to do whatever it took to save their families, Sorry, I have this bee disturbing me. Wish I could grab it, you know. So that's why, so Europe coming to Africa, the invasion of Africa was literally them doing the best they could do to save themselves. Colonialism is not new and wasn't introduced by the West. In fact, colonialism is life in general. It's life, because when God gave us the world, He gave us the world and told us to exploit the world. And so, by default, we were created to colonize the world. So colonialism is good. But, that's a very hard thing to understand. So let me just give it to you in the context that you already know. What is the true history of the great Africa? Because when you see those pyramids and you see those temples and you see our myths of great kings and demigods in Africa, not the shit they teach you at school, but the real truth about the great Africa. It is true, Africa was great. We were the greatest and strongest civilization on earth, the wisest people. We were a formidable empire, a formidable race, the strongest. Guys, forgive my tweaking. There's a bee in the area and I don't want to disturb it because I don't want to be stung. We were a formidable empire, that ruled the world. Those pyramids, that antiquity that you see, the temples, are all remnants of this great, civilization. And nothing compared to this city of Enoch. It's a biblical city of Cain, nothing compared to this great civilization. It was alienic. In fact, in history, it's a civilization where they say the children of gods themselves, the fallen angels themselves, ruled the earth. It was such a great civilization, the greatest that has ever graced the earth, and that was just our race, That's why you see many Africans call themselves the gods, because our race was the race of the gods. We were giants. Even the Bible tells you about the giants, tells you about the children of God Himself slept with the women of the earth, the women of men, and gave birth to this giant race. They talk about that great Africa. But what was this great Africa? At this peak of this great Africa of demigods, of your race, the black race ruling the world, the rest of the races on earth were rags, They were made beggars. They were destitute, They were under this tyrannical, oppressive, evil rule, And they begged your forefathers to be slaves. They had nothing. They were oppressed totally, suffering, dying. The more we colonized, the more we tortured them. We devoured them so much, we got so greedy, that we started literally killing men for fun. It was the worst tyranny ever, And the highest and the noblest job, they could ever have was to be masons, to be builders of our beautiful castles, Because, we were kings. We couldn't get into building. We were greedy, ignorant, eating. We laid our guard down, And these masons were the The builders of the gods, they were our builders, you know. And oh, we colonized the world. We colonized the world, you know. We colonized. So before you blame colonialism, you understand that we started the game. Africa started the game of colonizing. Right from when we split from East Africa, moving northwards, we were taking over land. And it was repetitive. So the first group would go, the second group would go and dominate that group, and that's how, and then the second group would move because of population pressure, because of civil strife, further. And that's how we moved and conquered the whole world through colonialism. And so it returns. So this is a rotation, it's a cycle. So the West coming to colonize Africa was a cycle. In fact, it was masterminded by this masonry group. Because the art of construction in that civilized world was also like really advanced. So you had to really go to school to become a master mason, a grand mason. Whew, you had to go to school, you know. So that's one. The second is, we all know that indeed life started in Africa. We know that. We also know, and you hear many black people preaching that the black race is the primary race that gave birth to all other races. It's true, because from the black race you can get all the other races, and from the other races you can't get the black race. It's true. Everybody knows that, and there's proof in that. You know, you've seen people like Michael Jackson turn white. Have you seen any white turn black? It's impossible. Well, let them try it and they will know it's impossible. If you doubt me, they've turned, but it still doesn't get the same thing, you know. Meaning that if life really started in Africa, and Africa is the parent of the world, or the Africans or the black race are the parents of the other races, then the other races are our children, and so they are very much entitled to Africa, just like us, you know. Which brings me to a serious question. What kind of parent chases away their starving child or resents them for taking responsibility? You know, when you go back home to your parents' house, do they chase you because you've switched on the TV and gotten some food from the fridge? You know, they don't. They don't resent you for that. They're not vengeful for that. So that's another, you know, point and food for thought. So back to the Masons, the privileged slaves that we had. So the Masons are the people responsible for the coup d'etat against our oppressive, you know, tyranny. You know, this is why they are called the free Masons, because initially they were not free; they were slave Masons. You know, they were a group of slaves, you know, that conspired against the gods, against the Africans, because the Africans were the gods, and the main king, the pharaoh, whatever you want to call him today, he was the god. You know, that's how when we ruled, we were gods. The rest were nothing, and our race was the race of gods. You know, talk about fascism. You know, they were real fascists. We believed our race was more superior than any other race. It was the parent race. We gave birth to you. You're nothing. Who are the gods? It was a real evil. It was real evil. I mean, that real evil in everyone is from us, the parents. We are as evil as it gets. Africa is as evil as it gets. I mean, you can look around and just see what we are doing to each other out of apeness and stupidity, you know. So anyway, these guys conspired against the god, you know, and killed that god king, or, you know, the pharaoh, and overthrew They overthrew the emperor, the emperor, and took over the empire, and ended the Dark Ages. So you've heard of the Dark Ages. The real Dark Ages. You know why they are called Dark Ages? Or it was called the Dark Age? Or their triumph was called Bringing Light? You know, you need to think about these terms. Deep within these metaphors, deep within these meta-narratives lies a blatant truth, you know. So, to become a master mason, I've already told you, to become a grand master, you know, was years of education. So these guys knew the tricks of the gods. They knew the art. Most of the time, they sent out slaves to capture slaves. Even in Africa here, you know that the Arabs used African soldiers to capture African slaves sometimes. These raids were done by Africans. So the same way, the Africans used these other races to capture other races, and the trusted people that were used were the privileged soldiers, and these were these masons. And so they knew the art of colonizing, and the art of colonizing is called reverse sanity. They reverse your sanity, you know, and this reversing of sanity is what creates Apeness, the colonized mind. I've already explained Apeness in the previous videos, you know, so I hope you're with me, right? So after overthrowing the gods, you know, of course the Masons looted all the literature, you know, whatever little secrets we hadn't given them, they were able to loot that. You know, most of the secrets were already in the blood because we had a different education. That's the African, strong African culture that today you see is, you know, you know, is like crazy strong, you know. That spirit is, because we were privileged, so we were raised in that rich society, you know, that benevolence, and you know, we let our guard down, you know. That's how the, you know, Masons were able to take over and free themselves. Exactly. Free themselves from our tyranny, you know. So they learned how to, you know, colonize, how to decolonize the mind. And so when they learned to decolonize the mind, they were able to free themselves, you know. And of course, they were vengeful. They had suffered for years and years and years, you know. Their people had been killed, you know, who were really terrible people. And so they waged a war against, you know, the descendants of the gods, and that's the Africa of today, you know. And that was when they started this whole colonial thing, you know. And Africa, like I say, had colonized the world. So we were in Asia, we were in America, we were everywhere else. And you can see the civilizations, the Aztec, you know, you go to China, you will see these pyramids, you will see this mark. But you know they are from Africa because the oldest and the strongest are Africa, the African ones. And the literature is in the African ones. So Africa was the headquarters. And the metaphors, the meta-narratives, the stories of Africa will tell you. And if you even look deeper in Africa, you know, you'll find more pyramids within Africa, like that have turned into hills or things like that. You know, the graves of Eve, the grave of Eve in Uganda. Okay, she's not called Eve, she's called Nambi, but the grave of Nambi, that's a pyramid within Uganda. I mean, there are many hills that are named after these. We know all African kings were buried in hills. You know, in Uganda we had kings make man-made lakes and stuff like that. Imagine the king would make a lake, and this was just another king. You know, it wasn't even the supreme king of Kitara. You know, Kitara comes from the star Cyrus. You know about that African history that says that humanity is foreign to the earth and we came from that star, Sirius, that star that the Israelites today use as the Star of David, and that big star, the one that you wish upon, you know, the one that represented the birth of Christ, you know, that star. That's Kitara. That star is very that glorification of that Sirius star comes from Africa, because Africa, I believe if you even search think the Jogons or something like that, you will find myths and the circles and stuff like that. All over Africa, you will find the truths behind all that. Where that whole alien thing comes from. It comes from Africa. So there's nothing new in the face of the earth, because what's happening is just more unveiling of this literature. Of course, there's some new stuff that has come out because the Western civilization, much as it's still young, it has been able to do well. The Masons have been able to keep this secret information flowing within them, within their bloodlines, and so we have been able to achieve immense civilization out of it, which is remarkable. And the world remains advancing. Okay, so with this background, let's bring everything full circle. What does this mean? This means that colonizing is redemption, or colonialism is a key. It means that the problem is the colonized mind, Apeness, not the colonizer, because the colonizer is only the teacher. He's only doing what God sent us to do. So because knowledge is passed through colonialism, the magic is to learn the ropes and decolonize yourself. But this is only manifested, this magic is only manifested to the pure of hearts. Salvation comes to the clean. So long as you still have resentment, vengeance, and that anger against colonialism, you're not able to see the magic. You're not able to learn from colonialism. And so you hate colonialism. And that's why you see the more Africa hates colonialism, the more enslaved we are. You understand? And this, so what destroys Africa is that resentment, that vengefulness, that evil that is still within Africans, that hateful Africa. Africa is held hateful, but that hate is childish. It's ignorance of knowing the great Africa that I just described, So they've kept us as infants and we have failed to grow because they hid this history from you. But you can get it back because all you have to do is repent. Once you repent, once you speak the truth, then order manifests. You access the magic and then you begin to decolonize yourself. And that's why you hear they say love is freedom, because your freedom comes from love. Even obvious knowledge is the more you love the white man, the more he's going to open up to you and be your friend and tell you the truth and so free you. And that's why you see the people that do well in Africa are the people that embrace the white man. Although they embrace the white man, but they maintain the colonized mind. So they are apes with the white man. But when you embrace colonialism and you free yourself and decolonize yourself, then when you embrace the white man, you embrace not trusting out of naivety, but trusting out of courage. But by hating colonialism, you hate yourself. And that's why Africa has failed to unite. Because you preach against colonialism and yet unity is colonialism. Anyway, this ends part 1. Let me jog and then I'll settle down and give you part 2. But think about this and look out for the next video. If you haven't subscribed to the Colonial Experience, please subscribe. As you can see, we're getting into the fun stuff. By the time we're embracing colonialism, it means that we are starting to see the light. Because in embracing colonialism, you free your mind. You're able to learn how you are colonized. And you're able to decipher how colonialism works. And so learn to decolonize yourself. And learn that the white man didn't do this because he hates you. They did this to save their lives. And you must learn to do it to save your life. And not do it in a vengeful way, but do it in a loving way. Alright guys, see you on the next video. Thanks.